Blog Talk Radio.
The following ingredients include a look behind the scenes. Cook uncovered until hot. Add grooves to taste.
I would like, if I may, to take you on a strange journey.
Once upon a time, there was a little girl.
The accident was over a year ago. A second woman has been elected president. The 12th planet has been named in the solar system. The last wild polar bear has died. I slept through it all. I was here for my waking. He called it a beginning. He said it was good. I think you may have thought that anything I did was good.
Welcome to Transition Radio with your host, Mark Angelo Cummings.
And your hostess, Jessica Lynn Cummings.
The show for trans folks by trans folks, here to let your voice be heard.
Hello, and good evening and late afternoon for those of us who are here in Mountain Time. This is Transition Radio, and my name is Mark Angelo Cummings, your host.
And I am Jessica Lynn Cummings, your hostess. Tonight's show is being broadcast live from Silver City, New Mexico, which will probably be that way for a while. We wanted to take a moment to thank our sponsors, thebreastwarmstore.com. They have everything you can imagine to enhance your feminizing needs.
And the fabulous Dr. Vartan Madirosian, a facial feminization specialist based out of Jupiter, Florida. Please visit our website and click on the banners and show your support, and please tell them Transition Radio sent you. It is amazingly hot inside the studio. Our AC has been broken. Actually, the fan, and we've ordered it. It was on back order, and finally, I think it's on its way.
Yay.
So the fan is what we got to try to keep
fan motor. The fan.
The fan is what's trying to keep us cool here in this hot oven. But
and it's just circulating hot air.
Yeah, that's all it's doing. But anyway, thank you so much for joining us this evening. We have several topics of discussion, as usual, every week, and we also invite you to call in with your question, comments. The number to call in is 646-716-6895. That's 646-716-6895, or join us on chat on either the Blog Talk chat or on our website chat. Anyway,
the website is under TV and Chat tab at the top of the page, so you can find our chat room that way.
And we're going to talk about the road to transitioning and what to expect. Now, it is a long road for some, and many people undergo this road without really knowing what it fully entails. Number one thing, therapy. Therapy is very important. And not just therapy for your gender dysphoria, but therapy for a lot of the issues that we as transgender individuals come with besides gender dysphoria. So you go to therapy to find out if you have gender dysphoria.
Exactly.
We're going to be a little devil's advocate here.
What is gender dysphoria, and when did we start thinking about it?
Exactly. I mean, all of a sudden, I know a lot of us, prior to this big exodus and all the information that there is out there now, we really didn't know what gender dysphoria was. We felt different. We knew that we went back and forth in our energy feeling, our frequency source, male and female, but then all of a sudden this word came out. Gender dysphoria. You've got this condition.
Well, they now basically, don't require a letter from a therapist to start HRT any longer. But it is highly recommended because in a lot of cases there's other, like Mark was saying earlier, there's other underlying issues that could be present, not just the gender dysphoria. Anxiety and depression is one big key thing that falls into place that is inclusive with gender dysphoria, but may not always be the trigger. The gender dysphoria may not always be the trigger for this anxiety and this depression. It could be other underlying issues that we're totally unaware of, and a therapist can help bring that out. in a lot of situations, so even though a therapy letter and carry letter is not required to start hormones, you can go to an endocrinologist and they can determine whether or not to put you on a regimen suitable for you. But it is highly recommended that you do find a good therapist that will help you try to get to the bottom line of where your anxiety and depression is coming from, because it may not be just solely alone gender dysphoria.
And I truly believe that the word gender dysphoria, again, another medical term created so that they could bill Medicare, bill your insurance company or whatever else, what actually is gender dysphoria? I mean, we feel that one side of us has been suppressed by society, by our parents, by our friends, even by ourselves, because we're afraid to be made ridicule. But what if there's no dysphoria? What if it's just we are trying to express both our energies, and because we were born in a certain gender, we feel that it is not okay to express our other side because we're going to get ridiculed.
Right.
Now, another thing to look at is hormone use. Are you a candidate for this treatment?
And how far can hormones take you? People seem to have this misinterpretation of what HRT is all about, and I see it every day in and out on Facebook, etc., and other social networks, that, going on HRT is going to make me a woman or make me a man. Well, that's not always the case for everybody. I mean, HRT can only do so much for a person. You have to go into embarking on that journey to taking these medications, A, for the rest of your life. B, you're going to also be in a situation where you're going to have to realize that these are not magic pills or injections. They are going to, yes, soften your features. They are going to, yes, give you a different body shape. And yes, you are going to grow breasts. Just like with any other genetic female. Your breasts may not come out looking like you intended. Your body, your features may not come out as you intended. But that's a risk you have to take, and you have to say, am I willing to do this without the hormones first? And be myself. A lot of people would say no. I myself said no for the longest time. But I think that a lot of people don't realize what they're getting into when they do go through and take that big step to start taking hormone replacement therapy.
And also the misconception that hormones are going to turn you into that gender that you feel that you are. That's a major misconception. You may get the characteristics that you want. You may get to wear the costume that you want and feel appropriate for you, but it does not turn you into the gender that you are wanting to transition to. It makes you comfortable. As an FTM, I could say that hormones right away gave me that secondary characteristics of a man, and it made me feel like a man, but deep down inside, I know that I'm not a man. I'm a trans man.
Right, and the thing, FTMs transition so much better because we've said time and time again that HRT, it's easier to turn Eve into Adam than it is Adam into Eve, because testosterone has already, for the most of us that transition midlife or later, already have full-blown secondary characteristics, whereas females, genetic females, do not have secondary characteristics. The testosterone is what builds these secondary characteristics in FTMs. That is why FTMs transition so much more gracefully than MTS, because it's easier to add those secondary characteristics than it is to remove them, and it's also less costly. Now, they do have other areas that are a little tougher to deal with, but, that's all, again, in the mental mind state and how you handle it.
Right. And then, again, the bottom line is we're not turning into something, and a lot of people say, well, I've always been a woman, I've always been a man. Well, that's up for debate.
Maybe mentally.
That's up for debate in a lot of regions and areas. And not to say that you can't identify as you wish, but to know that this is it's like a treatment. Like everything in the world, every disease, you notice there's very little cures. There's only treatment. So it's a treatment to help you deal with how you feel inside and to help you present yourself as you wish. And then we have surgery, How much can surgery actually change you?
And are you really now that gender even after surgery?
Exactly. I mean, that's another misconception where all of a sudden I have a piece of my arm taken out, they're going to roll it up into a burrito and it's going to dangle in between my legs and maybe a rod to make it hard or a pump or whatever else. Now I'm a man because a doctor created a penis or vice versa.
But the side effects is for the FTM is that what if you go through all that painful surgery, spend all that countless amount of money, and the new fallacy does not take? What happens then?
Exactly.
It's a question you need to answer.
Exactly. And well, what happens then? Like there was an FTM in Germany somewhere who actually committed suicide because they boxed him all up. Mm-hmm. His genital became necrotic and had all sorts of issues, and this happens a lot. It even happens with our nipples. So, it's one of those things. You feel like you're going to feel better, but half the time you really don't because, I'm sorry, it's man-made. It's not nature-made, and it doesn't work the way you want it to work.
Exactly. And then, not to mention, are you going to be able to mentally handle if things don't go the way that you anticipated them to go? Do the risks outweigh the end result?
Exactly.
And that is key, because there is risks involved with any surgery, period, any invasive surgery,
exactly.
And which is exactly what SRS is for either FTM or MTF.
And not enough long-term studies have been done.
Exactly.
Now, anyway, all of this that you've gone through, how effective has it actually been?
How many people are actually truly happy even after transition? That's a huge question because there has been an influx of people detransitioning, and it makes you wonder why that is. But
there's a lot of regrets that take place, and that brings us to this next article.
Which drove us to do some research in detransition, and here's an article that we actually did find on regret of gender transition. There are some people who undergo a gender transition, either fully or to some extent via surgery, HRT, and then regret having done so, and they do what is called detransition. They retransition back to their natural gender at birth. This post that we found attempts to explore this phenomenon, and some reasons why this might occur include
the person is not transsexual, which we see a lot of that of. The person may have found by going through their transition that they are not in fact comfortable living in the other gender and that they feel either genderqueer or more closely aligned with the natural gender. Certainly instances of transitions involving surgery might have been prevented if there were a greater attempt to determine this beforehand.
However, just like with non-trans issues, we often go ahead with things we think are right for us, but only to discover that they were not. Sometimes the discovery just isn't possible without actually trying it out first. The real-life experience, also known as RLE, which you can see the WPATH standards of care, is an attempt to systematize this discovery process before any major surgeries occur.
Regardless of whether the person is truly transsexual or not, it's possible that because of having lived so long with gender dysphoria and accompanying social and physical dissatisfaction, one may think of a full gender transition as a magical ticket to happiness. I've seen this, sometimes unconscious, which accompanied by other unrealistic expectations such as the idea that one will have a social community, better social skills, be more popular, etc.
All the wrong reasons.
Exactly.
In a lot of cases. When this turns out not to be the case and not to be true, there can be confusion and uncertainty that tends to focus on one's gender transition. It may be that the gender transition was in the person's best interest, yet other causes of unhappiness and personal problems had not been sufficiently explored and worked through prior to the transition. Sometimes with gender variant people work on other problems, and the work on the other problems is delayed because the gender issues tend to take precedence and priority above and beyond any other problem that maybe you may have.
The person encounters too many problems with transition, their dissatisfaction with their post-transition life. These problems could include lack of family support, loss of partner, problems with transition in the workplace, disappointment with the outcome of surgery, and problems, in quotation, passing as the new gender. Additionally, transitioning is hard. There are many hoops to jump through one enters into a group of discrimination against people. This can be exceedingly disconcerting for some.
Exactly. And I also think that, the whole thing where it says that even after surgery, a lot of trans women and trans men have a problem with passing. Well, here, what's the surgery cost for SRS for an MTF? It's usually in the range of $20,000 to $30,000 for the full downstairs gamut. Okay, but you want to talk about passing. Just because you have a vagina does not make you a woman. It's not going to make you that gender that you present yourself to be. If passing is important to you, then you may want to work from the top down, not from the bottom up. Because, it's like if you don't have the masculine features removed upstairs, but you have them removed downstairs, how are you going to identify yourself? What? Somebody sits there and says, oh, you're a tranny, or you're a guy, a dude in a dress. What are you going to do? Pull your panties down and say, no, look, I have a vagina. It doesn't work that way. If you really are focused on passing and that is key to you, then you need to start from the top down in a lot of cases to eliminate their secondary characteristics.
And sometimes, no matter what you do, because, again, the way you walk, the way you talk, just, you've been living in this body for 30, 40, 50 years. You can't just erase.
Some things will come naturally, but some things take a lot of work.
Yes.
Main thing with MTFs, voice, walk, attitude.
Bone structure.
Bone structure you can't see because the hormones will debiltate the mass.
But not necessarily
not
so.
The
shoulders being wide and things like that.
But that depends on the individual. Everybody is different, and everybody's transition goes differently. We're not all going to be supermodels. If that was the case, the whole world would be filled with supermodels.
And it's not about
studs.
It's not about passing. It's about being comfortable in your skin.
It's about being true to yourself.
Educating people that, hey, trans individuals do exist. I know many want to blend in, but how do we educate? How do we get our trans rights if we are transphobic ourselves and do not want others to know that we're trans?
And we're not saying stick out like a sore thumb either. Anyway, there are many different levels of regret, and we're going to touch a little bit on the possibility of those regrets. Certainly a person who has made a gender transition can have certain regrets that are not extreme enough to cause them to wish to detransition. The WPATH Standards of Care notes that cases are known of persons who have received hormone therapy and sex reassignment surgery who later regretted their inability to parent genetically related children. Other less extreme regrets can involve loss of certain benefits of privileges commonly associated with one's birth gender or another, such as male privilege or, a lot of trans girls I've been noticing lately have this male-dominating attitude and, and male ego. And if you truly want the world to see you as a woman, then you need to first start acting like one, and you need to lose the male domination. You need to lose the male aggression. You need to lose the male ego and stop being so argumentative about everything and bashing everybody, because that's what men do. And if you're claiming to be a woman, you sure are not acting like it if this is what you're presenting to everybody, society, and the community as a whole.
And I know many are going to say, well, that's very chauvinistic and very stereotypical, but in reality, and women always tend to be softer. The new women now, because the women's lib and trying to show this we have power too, have changed the way women have been in the past. But you guys get our drift.
But they still are very much women. They don't have male ego. What they're trying to do is they're trying to eliminate the stereotypes that have been placed upon women and the stigma that have been placed among women their entire lives and their past generations' lives and everything that they fought so hard to become equivalent to that of the male population, because women were to be seen, not heard, were to be sex objects and toys for men's pleasure. And it's amazing how I can see why a lot of feminist movements do not like trans women. And I can totally understand why this is. And it's because we, as trans women, feed right into those stereotypes that they're working so hard to eliminate.
Right.
And we're trying to do it with male ego, male attitudes, and everything else, but on the outside we're trying to present as female. And you got to give somewhere, people. You got to give one, let go of it, and work moving forward. Not to say relieving yourself of your male knowledge that you gained through however many years you were a male, but because that can come in handy for safety precautions for yourself as well.
I guess that's why they're so angry too, because it's like they feel stuck or trapped, and they're so used to being demanding, used to getting their ways, and all of a sudden, there are women and they're meant to be softer, but they're struggling with that battle within. And then let's go further on the street.
I do that with you sometimes, don't I?
Yeah, you do. lots of times. There's some research
Not
done.
that bad.
Some research done, and different individuals like Junge A., who did a research in 1992 of sexual assignments for 30 years of international follow-up. And the actual report stated that it looked at 70 previous studies and reviews on outcomes following sexual assignment surgeries. This included 2,000 individuals from 1961 to 1991. This doesn't take into account individuals who transitioned without surgery, but around 70% of MTFs were satisfied and 90% of FTMs were satisfied.
Were satisfied? 70% were and 90% were not?
No. 70% of the MTFs were satisfied and 90% of the FTMs
okay.
were satisfied.
I missed the acronym there. Sorry, I'm blonde. Oh well. There is a great need for support during and after transition. Don't underestimate the need for supportive people and institutions, including friends, family, support groups, therapy, religious institutions, knitting circles, etc., etc., etc. It's like drinking water in the desert. You have to do it even if you're not feeling thirsty, because if you feel thirsty, it's probably too late. You're already dehydrated. Withdrawing is not the answer. It only makes things worse.
And I believe that's why there's a lot of anger. Mm-hmm. And you go on Facebook and you go on these forums, you see there's so much anger and so much attack. If you disagree with someone, they can't handle that disagreement, so they start calling you names, and they start threatening you, and they start reporting your Facebook pages and shutting down your groups and things of that.
Male ego,
all the way.
Male aggression.
Very often when people find themselves a part of a new group, they feel they have to be a spokesperson, activist, possess complete knowledge of said group, which we see very much. That's great if you want to do that, but it should be a conscious choice and not an obligation.
Mm-hmm. Very
true. Many things to think about. Also, something that is also crosses a lot of people's mind is your sexual orientation going to change after your transition? And I know this has...
It's a good question.
Yes.
Because does it really change? Transgender individuals will sometimes change sexual orientation after transitioning. I have found that many patients come in with this belief. Aline Istar, a family therapist, clinical social worker, and gender expert, notes that gender transition can have a tremendous impact on sexual orientation, sometimes affecting one's sexual interests. And in the next paragraph, sexual orientation is not malleable and cannot be changed through force or will.
There seems to be a good deal of confusion and disagreement on the topic in the transgender community. Putting aside for a moment the fact that transitioning is a long process with no particular endpoint, where a change in sexual orientation could be assessed and can often mean different things to different people, and that most transsexuals do not have surgeries. Perhaps what is really happening in these cases is that individuals are choosing partners more for a complex array of factors that help that individual feel confirmed in their authentically felt gender rather than for their desires based on their maleness or femaleness.
Just thinking about this logically for a moment, one sees that claims of so-called reparative therapies on non-trans homosexuals have been thoroughly debunked over the past few decades. For summaries, you can see Haldeman, 1994, or Drescher, 1998, and Bright, 2004. What bit of alchemy would then achieve this monumentous transformation on the transsexual? Hormone replacement therapy? By the same logic, scores of menopausal lesbians taking feminizing hormones would suddenly switch to becoming attracted to men.
A 1998 research paper titled Changes in the Social Orientation of 6 Heterosexuals Male to Female Transsexuals by Christopher Descalos of the Department of Sociology in the Arizona State University. He asserts that these respondents stated that before transitioning they had been sexually oriented towards females. After transitioning, these same respondents reported that they were sexually oriented towards males. 5 of the 6 respondents reported having various sexual encounters with males since transitioning. The respondents explained that changes in their sexual orientation as part of their emerging female gender identities. 3 of the respondents claimed that the use of female hormones played a role in changing their sexual orientation.
I find that hard to believe because, I think that there always had to be an attraction to maybe both genders prior to transition. I don't think, like the article was stating that, what about the lesbians that go through menopause? You give them feminizing hormones, which is estrogen, to relieve the symptoms from menopause. And does that mean that they're going to all of a sudden now change their whole sexual orientation and start desiring men? I don't know.
Because if you gave the lesbian testosterone, and I could tell you for a fact because when I was a lesbian and I was a female, I was not attracted to men. Actually, I was very fearful of men. And when I started, maybe like 2 years into my hormonal therapy, I started becoming attracted to men. And there are, in fact, many transgender male who at one point were attracted to female, and then all of a sudden they became attracted.
So your entire life, you never looked at a guy and said, wow, he's cute, or never had any attraction to men at any point in your lifetime?
You could look like a regular heterosexual individual could look at an individual and say, oh, that's an attractive individual.
There's a difference.
But the thought of kissing a guy, the thought of having a guy grope me and touch me kind of grossed me out. And now it's not that way at all.
It took me a long time to realize that I was bisexual, whether it be male, female, whatever, but it took me a long time to realize because inside I would look at other people, I would look at women, I would be like, oh, they're beautiful, but when I look at women, I would look at them in a way such as my desire to be that woman. I would look at guys and I would think they were cute. Well, I had to do my own life experience of deciding what was right for me, what felt natural sexually and what then. Well, I didn't feel natural being with a female as a guy. I didn't feel natural being with a guy as a guy. So it wasn't until I was actually able to open up and be Jessica and be with either or, it felt natural at that point. It itself felt natural, but even though I still was not very sexually active.
I think the bottom line is once you feel comfortable in your skin, I think before as Maritza, when I was a female, I didn't feel comfortable being groped and, totally sexualized by a male. Then now that I feel more comfortable in my skin, stuff like that doesn't bother me.
Oh, so that's why when we go to the gay bar, you like all the guys groping you and stuff.
Oh, yeah, right.
Anyway, here's some advice not to take. Oh my God, we found this article and could not believe what we read. And the article is entitled, How to Know If Your Date is Transgender. Getting to know your date can sometimes involve wondering about many things, including their gender identity. This can be a difficult topic to bring up, but being direct and sensitive will make things better for everyone in the long run.
Never ask your date if they're trans, as you will likely offend either way. You'll never be able to identify a trans person through physical attributes. Cough, cough.
Giggle, giggle.
Giggle, yeah. People's bodies are incredibly diverse, and a single physical characteristic won't say much about a person, one way or the other. Moreover, genital reconstruction surgery has come such a long way that many who undergo it, not all trans people do, are indistinguishably from those who haven't. At any rate, they will likely tell you before intimate contact.
Here's the bottom line. It is their life, and disclosing can be very painful and even dangerous for them. In short, they are not required to tell you, nor should they have to if they don't want to. Disclosure is of utmost importance.
Extremely.
I mean, that's basically saying you should not say anything and you should deceive the person that you're planning on getting intimate with and let them find what you have between your legs. That's a recipe for disaster.
And even if you've had the surgeries, it's still that person...
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, that person needs to know.
Somebody's going to figure it out eventually, and when they do, they're not going to be very happy. Let's just put it that way. So, examine your own bias. If you're wondering if your date is trans, you might be harboring some negative stereotypes in your mind that are not based in reality. Moreover, your reaction to your date, if they are trans, based on your misunderstanding and bias, can be devastating, and someone who already faces societal rejection and abuse.
If you find yourself dealing with fear over finding out your date is trans, read How to Deal with Transphobia, or don't read it because that's going to be the advice, and How to Respect a Transgender Person. Stop worrying about whether your date is trans. There are many other things to worry about, such as STDs. I don't know. If the person is trans, wait for them to tell you. If everything else has gone well up to that point, you can cross that bridge when you get there.
Keep an open mind. There are many happy endings that begin with a date where one person did not know the other person was trans.
Happy ending, like you ended up as a statistics and the front paper, and then they wonder why they're so...
Talk about a crappy way to get you 15 minutes of fame.
Yeah, considered a hate crime due to deceit.
Yeah.
And many people don't want to see that, but that is...
I hate to say it, but I'd have to say a good portion of any guy that dates a trans woman is already going to know she's trans. Don't take that for granted that they do, because they may not. But the fact is that it's possible that they already know. And if they are proceeding to take you out on a date, they're okay with it. But disclosure is of utmost importance, and that is the way to keep you alive. Being delusional, thinking you're a woman because of whatever surgeries you may have had, that you can deceive this person into believing that you're a natural-born woman, I wish you the best of luck and Godspeed, because you may be the topic of the next TDOR.
And we're teaching the new trans generation a formula for disaster. One of the movies that comes to mind with this particular subject is Crying Game.
Yeah.
She thought he knew, and when he discovered she had the same thing he had between his legs, he started puking, became,
Same thing with Soldier's Girl.
Yeah.
Remember that?
And sometimes she will have a happy ending, because sometimes people can get past that. But what if somebody is, really anti-gay? And
what if they're totally homophobe?
Yeah, and
now you just put them in a situation to make them feel like a homosexual.
Exactly. And then anger kicks in, and when anger kicks in, people lose their way of acting, and they may get violent, and then you may get hurt, and then we try to blame the oppressor, but sometimes the victim is also responsible.
Put yourself into the other person's shoes for a moment and take yourself back to prior to transition, when you had sexual identity issues growing up as a teenager through puberty, etc. You had all these sexual identity issues. You had all these gender identity issues. Think about that for a moment. And now what you're doing is you're putting somebody in the position to question their own sexual orientation or their own sexual identity or gender identity, whatever. You're putting them in your same situation that you were in for many, many years. So is that really fair?
Right,
Or is it more fair to disclose this information and let them know what they're getting into and let them make their decision? Because if they turn around and walk away, good riddance, don't let the door hit you where the good Lord split you.
And nobody gets hurt, nobody gets hurt in the end. I remember when you and I had that sabbatical, we broke up, and I would go out to bars, and the guy would buy me a drink, and the first thing after he bought me the drink, even beforehand, I would say, I'm not like everybody else. I was born a female.
That's my
some people had no problems with it. Some people, you could see the terrifying look in their face. Like, you mean you've got a vagina?
That's my
he's a gay, he's a gay guy.
I always did that before, prior to meeting you and everything. And, guys would offer to buy me drinks, and, I would let them buy me my first drink, and we'd sit there and talk, and that's when I would disclose that I was transgender. And either they would buy me another drink and want to continue talking. Now we were in more personal discussions and topics, which I was fine with and open to discussing.
Right.
So, all of that either played into a part. And I'd have to say 90% of the time that I did disclose was a positive reaction. The other 10% was like, oh, well, I'm not really into that. But, hey, it's cool. I'm glad you told me. Thank you for letting me know. So either way, 100% of the time it worked out positively for me because they didn't feel deceived. They realized that I was honest and open and true about who I was. I'm transsexual. There's nothing I can do about that. Either you love me for me, and you like me for me, and you want to hang out with me, or it doesn't go any further than this conversation at this table at this moment.
And honesty is very important because as we want people to be honest with us, we need to be honest with people. And that is something crucial for a good relationship. And also, why invest time, wait a couple of months, and all of a sudden you tell the person, and this person wants nothing to do with you, this person doesn't want nothing to do with you, then you're going to get your feelings hurt. So why get your...
Or worse.
Or get hurt.
And the thing is, honesty is the best policy. I mean, come on, the whole thing that every transgender person that I've ever seen talk about being transgender is how they were always living a lie. So why are you going to transition and continue to lie? This is your time to be open, honest, and finally be free and be truly happy with who you are and be proud. Have that pride.
Exactly.
Say, hey, I'm transgender. Do you like it? Yeah, cool. Let's talk some more. Let's go out again.
Right.
Do you not like it? Do you find it appalling and disgusting? Good. Then hit the door, Jack. Don't come back,
Right. It's being truthful to yourself because you want to know that this person loves you for you. And I believe we're here to change the stereotypes, to break down these barriers that humanity has created, and we are here to do that, to break the gender molds, to break the stereotypical molds of sexuality, to open up humanity's hearts and minds. Anyway, guys, this Thursday coming up, we have Tammy Two-Tone. She's an awesome comedian. Please check out our live show, Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, aired live on Gay Live Television, and then we'll go on demand on Roku, and it's also aired live on Roku as well.
I think so, yeah.
So
we can also, the chat room will be open, so you can chat during the live show. There's a player in there, so you can watch the TV show live as you chat.
Yeah.
So come in and join us and put in your 2 cents.
Yeah, and you guys, I know we don't always agree, and a lot of people get angry at us, but these are topics that we need to talk about. These are topics that it's important to look at both sides. One-way street doesn't work, and some of you may feel different than we do, and that's okay, and it's part of having this discussion, which helps us all grow. Anyway, guys,
we love you, but remember to always love yourselves too.
Good night. Mwah.